Wilma, congratulations and thank you for having a second exhibition of Timeless Textiles here in this second location of the gallery. I'd love you to talk a little bit about your exhibition.
Thank you, Anne. It's been a great honour to be asked to have this exhibition here in this beautiful new space. I think the space really enhances the work. This body of work, is based on tea, and I think it's a quieter, more reflective body of work than I've done before. In all of the works, I've used tea in some way, either dyeing fabrics with tea or using tea bags. And many of the works are sculptural. So I have quite a few dolls, art dolls here, either reflecting the personalities of tea or interpreting poetry, either Chinese tea poetry or the ridiculous rhymes of Edward Lear. And that's been great fun to interpret those.
The three pieces behind you, Wilma,
Yes.
Reflecting both teas and the colour that they give, but I think also expressions. Would you be happy to talk to those three?
Certainly. This one here is called Masala Chai, and it is tea-dyed silk and some other silks over-dyed. And the expression on this girl is quiet, reflective, pensive, and I just think there's a little touch of colour, and that represents the spices that are added to the tea for chai tea. The next one is Rose Quinoa, which is a black tea flavoured with rose petals. And so there's a slight pink tinge to the fabrics. And because it's a blended tea, she's not quite Asian, she's not quite Eastern, she's a blend. And this lady here is, of course, Lady Grey. And I've represented Lady Grey as a younger person because Lady Grey tea is actually a very new tea in relation to the history of tea. So she's grey, but she's aristocratic, but certainly not pompous. And that hair of hers, which is slightly ginger, represents the citrus tones and the citrus flavours in Lady Grey tea. These four works are my family and my husband's family. In all of my bodies of work or series of works, I like to include my family in some way. These are photographs of our great-grandmothers, and the photographs have been scanned. The original photographs have been scanned and printed onto silk organza and then applied to canvas. The first two are of my husband's great-grandmothers who lived in England, and they were part of the suffragette movement, and they figure very highly in chronicles of the women's movement, particularly around Birmingham in England. So these are a little tribute to them. Of course, they were great tea drinkers, and so their words are printed onto tea bags and applied over the top of the photographs. The other two are my great-grandmothers, one of whom was the last woman in my family to have bound feet, and I really love the poem that I've put with her because she's sitting quite demurely and she looks as though she is waiting, and there is a bowl of tea on the little side table. So the poem says, softly closing the chamber door, alone I wait you in the empty room. You never came, disappointed I drank solitary tea, and I think it really suits her. The other one is my paternal great-grandmother, who looks a little stern, but there is a real gentleness about her face as well when you look closely. And I think her poem too, about never being lonely as she drinks tea, sitting in the shade, is a great reflection of her personality as well. This is an interpretation of Bohir tea, which is the brother of, if you like, of Lapsang Souchong tea and Oolong tea. And I just thought this tea was represented by a very gentle soul, and he's obviously just come from meditating and is having a small cup of tea very early in the morning. And this was a little bit of an interesting doll to actually dress, because while all the cottons are tea dyed, it's very hard to get a really deep colour. So I made him much darker and used a darker clay, and I made his arms and legs with tea bags. So I think he turned out really well, and I'm very happy with him.
Wilma, your work is very reflective, and one of the elements is that it draws you in to look at the very peaceful, respectful and very quiet work that you've done. I know that wabi-sabi is something that's very important to you and has clearly influenced you. I wondered if you would talk a little bit about wabi-sabi.
I think a lot of the work that I do has a little, I guess, touch of wabi-sabi. And this is a Japanese concept, which means appreciating the beauty of the impermanent, the transient, the humble, the authentic, and the imperfect. And I think working with tea, I've always thought that you could never be grumpy having a cup of tea. So working with tea really embraced lots of the philosophy of wabi-sabi, because it does make you think about things. It makes you feel so relaxed. I think that you can imagine beauty wherever you are. And so a lot of these works have reflected places as well, because I think when we go to different places, we somehow look at what is around us with more intensity, and perhaps with somehow a cleaner and clearer vision. So a lot of the colours of tea, even the fruity teas, which are very bright, are the colours of wabi-sabi. And I think that whole concept of seeing beauty in something past its usefulness is also part of that. So using tea bags somehow really appealed to me, and I think some of the wabi-sabi concepts of seeing things past its beauty that other people see. So in some of those other works too, even though they are buildings and probably not beautiful in their natural sense, I've tried to add, because when I took photographs, I found that I was taking photographs of very tall buildings that somehow I was attracted to. But when I got them home, I thought, oh, I'd forgotten that there was a beauty surrounding them. So in these works, the tea bags have actually added the natural beauty that surrounds these buildings. So in a sense, I've interpreted or extended the whole wabi-sabi philosophy.
Well, I'm also interested in the techniques that you've used to capture these images of people from New Guinea.
Yes, these images are a single image of a woman that I met during working as a volunteer in Papua New Guinea. The single image has been digitally manipulated in a couple of these. This one in the middle, I've used an effect called a panographic effect, and it somehow divides up, if you like, the photograph into geometrical shapes. So that really suited the idea of overlaying with tea bags. This particular image has been transferred onto or printed onto silk organza and then applied with medium onto the canvas. Underneath there are some tea bags laid down almost like a patchwork, and over the top there are some also laid over the top. So you get a kind of overlaid patchwork effect, and then I've stitched into that to give it some texture. The other one is a very similar idea, of this one on the end, is a very similar idea because the tea bags I just tore into circles. So it was using still the idea of a geometric shape. And the geometric shape originally came from putting tea bags onto the canvas and letting the stain of the tea bag settle onto the canvas. And so it more or less made circles of colour. So then I tore the tea bags in to circles and stitched over the top of them. The image again was on silk organza, and the face is a polymer clay face covered in tea bags. This one here is actually the same image but printed on silk chiffon, and it obviously took up a little bit more of the colour, and it just has tea bags overlaid onto the image and stitched, overstitched. So they're basically, all three use similar techniques, but they're applied in different ways.
Well, I was wondering where you're going to head to next with your artwork.
I really don't have any plans to create another series of works yet. I still would like to pursue working with tea and tea bags. I've enjoyed this whole process so much, and throughout all the research I've discovered lots and lots of tea bag artists around the world, and I have been following particularly a really renowned artist, Armenian artist called Armin Roch, and I would also like, I think, I have stitched a fair bit in this exhibition onto tea bags, and I'd really like to pursue stitching onto tea bags and applying tea bags onto fabric a lot more. So I'm hoping that I will learn as I go, and most of the techniques that I've applied to these exhibition pieces have been rather experimental, so I'd like now to consolidate some of those techniques and skills and extend them. So I'm really looking forward to trying to work more with tea, and I really feel very strongly about using found objects and recyclable materials. So having started with those stick dolls, I think there's quite many more journeys to travel to really have a look at how these can be extended further into art.
Last week you worked with a few women using a range of different tea bags, and I watched your excitement and enthusiasm, so certainly after the thousands of tea bags you've used on this exhibition, there's still a lot of interest, as you say, for you.
Well, the workshop we had last week was the first time I'd worked with anyone else using tea bags, and there were 3 wonderful women who were prepared to experiment very openly, and we were all very excited about the results that they got, and we did actually do some application of tea bags onto fabric, which I think has a lot of possibilities for all sorts of fibre and textile artists. So yes, it was very exciting, and it was just that first step in the next journey. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Wilma.